spirit of matter. And this is a Saturn day, Mars hour. So why am I talking about Neptune? To be honest, even I don't know. So what I do in these situations is I look at the chart and try to find out. First of all, ascendant is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is in Pisces retrograde. Midheaven on my Saturn, but is in Scorpio, 12 degrees Scorpio, ruled by Mars, with Mars in Cancer in the 7th. Mars ruled by the Moon. Moon is ruled by Saturn. So Moon is left the conjunction with Pluto and is beginning to go through Aquarius, 2-degree Aquarius. Neptune is 28 degrees Pisces. Sun is slowly applying to Neptune, but it's not doing very much other than participating in the bisextile that the Moon has just left. So I guess the Moon releasing from a sextile to Neptune. I don't know. Nice things that I've had. So before I'll get to the topic, as the Moon was applying to Pluto, this is the vlog part, as the Moon was applying to Pluto, I was dreaming that entire city, not entire, but there was a city in Tel Aviv. There was like medical buildings of 15-minute city. They were all white and they were burning. And then I was traveling to the train, and then we left the train, and there was this guy who was not wearing uniform, and he was trying to put small needles in us. And so we stopped and we put the needles back in him, and we watched him evaporated. And that was the dream. I remember it was very vivid. The fire was yellow, but there were no people. And before I was sleeping, I was just doing some magic to kind of burn off the karma or burn off anything malefic that is or could be affecting my life. So that was very, very beautiful. It was a good dream, all in all. But it seemed like people were not killed, okay? Only buildings were burning. The fire was, I was just looking at the fire, and it was so impressive. I don't know if this is kind of like the Saturn-Neptune approaching in Aries. I mean, I don't know, who can know? Yeah. So what prompted me to press record? I've been wanting to do another Neptune episode for a while now, as I am approaching my Neptune square along with my Pluto square, and there's just a ton of things Neptune. But Neptune is also traveling through his last phases in Pisces, and I have begun to notice stuff coming up from 2012. I addressed it, usually when I address it, Sun is 22 right now. I address it around cold cases, when to look for missing people, searching for learning techniques of how to use astrology in favor of that. So yes, absolutely, Neptune is related, and Neptune is going to give us a lot of resolutions from 2012, but especially those that are related to drug, to pharmaceuticals, and so on and so forth. So this is Neptune level karma. Another thing that happened to me at around 2012, 2013, and even later, I was just using a technique that I learned by Teal Swan to manifest. And that was imagining a pebble. Is that a pebble? That's how they call it. And I was barely able to even imagine it for like 30 seconds. And I began to indeed see more pebbles. I was living in a place where I was volunteering in order to get housing while I was a student. And there were children around, so I didn't know if that was like just me manifesting or paying attention to things. And as we began to work, another thing I was doing back then, we had a plot of land that we were turning into the kind of like a neighborhood farm, which is one of the things that I have to admit that they're pretty much good. Okay, like people can eat from their own produce. It's not like industrial weird shit. Um, I would do the agriculture different today, but I didn't know anything about permaculture. It was a great experience. And what we were doing, because this was a plot of land in a developing neighborhood, which was not at all developing, it was once a strong neighborhood, and then the municipality killed the leaders of this neighborhood to kind of like overpower, and then it became developing neighborhood. So naturally, it was prostitution in the street, and then we were picking up the condoms from the soil. I'm not joking. We were picking up the condoms from the soil to turn it into like farm soil, and some of the ladies were given were provided housing, but they don't like the psychiatric treatment that they were provided. And I know still one of them, and she can barely speak. They don't like let her speak, so they drugged her with stuff that don't allow her to speak. And the problem was not like, anyway, she's needed housing first and open dialogue, okay? And that still bugs me, but that's the thing. And as I was working my own plot of land, I noticed one, as I began to work on the half moons, I began to find one pebble, and I was like, wow, wow, I was so excited. And then the other one was as children were working with me. So there was this party, I think it was Independence Day. Yes, it was Independence Day. And I was just working the soil, and the children came to me because it was much more interesting than their parents doing boring stuff. And that's it. And we planted, and they were eating a watermelon. So it was Independence Day of Israel, and they were eating a watermelon, which is, everybody knows, now symbolic of the flag of Palestine. Until this war, I didn't know it actually. I didn't know that you couldn't wave the flag of Palestine, but given that it is Muslim Brotherhood of Satan, it's like, okay, but they say, well, this is the same as Zionist, and I'm like, yes, it's true. I learned this today as well. Okay, so so that is when I found the other pebble. And yesterday I was going to the other half moon that I was digging in, and kind of like going towards the neighbors. I found another pebble, and I couldn't help but think it was Friday, and it was a Venus day. Okay, the higher octave of Venus is Neptune. It was still Venus day. It was not Mars night, and I was just so excited to find these, and how it was kind of destined. And remember the time where I was just trying to envision, okay, these pebbles, because that was the most manifestation that I could do. I was so exhausted and so tired. I couldn't meditate at all. Okay, so that was kind of like the best that I could do, was just to try, and I couldn't even do it 5 minutes like Teal said. It was like, that's what I did, and it was so exciting. And then I remembered that in between the pebbles, the third pebble was when I began to be activist around the whole issue of, abolishing satanic ritual abuse. And Teal herself grew up in a Mormon cult where she was satanically ritual abused. And I was like, I got this tip from Teal Swan, and the journey that I went through, like building the half moons, and I know she's like a controversial character and so on. Yes, but this tip I got from her, and the whole journey that I went through was really, really exciting. And I couldn't help but think, in terms of time, this is Neptune. Neptune has the length, okay? It's slow mover. It's slower than Pluto. It has the length over a period of time where you surrender something, and it has exactly that quality of a message in a bottle. So naturally, it's not only Neptune, Pluto is also moving through Capricorn. But if I think about the pebbles themselves, that was the the most that I could do to envision something was that, or the most that I could do to manifest something in my life was that. Um, and it kind of miraculously turned into something way, way grander. And also the way that I received it and the things that I'm tending to today surrounding this thing. So Neptune karma has a quality to it of miracles. Um, and it touches on the place where we feel helpless. It touches on the place where we don't really see. We have to surrender something. We feel helpless in the situation. We have to surrender something. Yet it rules over the tides and the waves that bring in that message in a bottle, that process something into a state that is so all-encompassing and so and connecting between worlds that are so separate. That literally it does take all that going into the deep of the ocean and pulling something in. And then Neptune, as it culminates through a sign or it culminates through a transit, brings in the karma. Okay. And the karma is not in a negative sense. Okay. The karma can also be in a positive sense where you are helpless around the situation and that is slowly transforming, especially around the Neptune sextile Pluto. Okay, we are in the century of Neptune sextile Pluto, where things do transform. So, situation of helplessness transforms into situation of miraculous a joining of the forces from faraway worlds. And then I remember when I was in between houses, there was a woman that was also thinking to found like land for people and to find children and so on. And she had a dog, and she gave me a little bit of vetiver oil. She just gave me a little bit of drop of vetiver oil, and she also mentioned teal swan. So that was something that again would come up as Neptune was progressing around my ascendant. So that is kind of a story where something goes, so you surrender something, something is missing, um, and from this surrender, it hasn't gone lost. Okay, what's missing is not lost, and this is something that we need to keep in mind with Neptune. Okay, and from the place of helplessness to the place where things do manifest, okay, and on a bigger level. So Neptune level karma is exactly these type of stories. Neptune level karma is remembering that what is missing is not lost. That the points where we are helpless and have to surrender will sum up to a wave that washes over the shore. It can be even a tsunami. on that level. And I think when I did an episode earlier that where I looked at the Pluto generation of Virgo and they're evolving into the Pluto generation of Pisces, where we had the romantic era. So the overwhelm of the emotions of the romantic era is basically that evolution where the tides are summoning up and we become interested in exploring that depth and transforming from it. And throughout the episode, I discovered that the nuclear discoveries were actually being discovered in the Pluto Pisces, but then were probably forgotten with time, or missing with time, or people had to surrender for the discoveries because maybe they were considered crazy, maybe they were considered hallucinating, maybe they did not even believe what they were seeing or what was happening. And then it would be only during the Pluto, the other mutable sign of the Pluto Gemini, where we would build the A bomb. That's not the best use of it, but it's also yes, it's also, better than perpetuating sexual boundary violations, satanic ritual abuse, and so on, and for the rest of the people being so disconnected that those missing children are manifesting at these A bombs, because it's the sense of helplessness. So and yet Neptune does take you through the waves. Okay, if you think like, oh, I know this now, so I'm not going to feel so helpless, and so I'm going to have faith in the situation. Well, we also have to honor the process of Neptune. Um, and so things that have started in 2012, places where we've been incredibly maybe helpless at 2012, or places where we said something, okay, we put a message in a bottle in 2012, are culminating now. And you see how that karma, especially with Saturn in Pisces, that karma is evolving, and the miracle has patterns. Okay, I would think about Teal Swan again after I would find this third pebble again, of basically a bottle there that was, I don't know if it was empty bottle of wine or some sort of like apple cider vinegar or something. I'm not sure which one it was actually, to be honest. We talk about Neptune and addiction and stuff like that, but I would find that after tending to Neptune things, but also after tending to these Mormons, and how many times I said in this podcast, these Mormons, not at all, like totally forgetting about Teal, because I kind of switched off from that, where I would go to therapy, and so I would try to meet my needs, and then I went to therapy with that I was supposed to meet my needs, but whatever happened, and I just forgot about therapy modalities altogether. And as well as like manifestation, I turned more into astrology, kind of like patterns in manifestation, kind of not giving up manifestation, because I saw that something works here, but there's also something other things at play. And so kind of the third pebble kind of brought it all. Okay, but I have no idea how many pebbles are hiding there still, but it brought it all together. And when all you can even try to imagine is a pebble, um, then and it takes strength and it takes time. And I think at a certain level, I even took amphetamines when I was trying whether to fix my room or to do the laundry, or it began from like studies, but it was just attempt to be, and then and it helped me then process traumas and stuff like that. So kind of unexpected things, unexpected use of drugs, because for what I was given the studies for, it was one of those misdiagnoses of PTSD, of CPTSD, and then they would be concerned to give amphetamines. Okay, so there's with a lot of fears that I was given amphetamines, but what I was given was not helping. The amphetamines helped me to process trauma, which was completely saying that I'm probably not all these things that gave me a degree, because it's very difficult to prove CPTSD, right? And they say it's not from the trauma, because they don't want you to talk, they don't want to validate the trauma. If you agree to receive a psychiatric tagging that supports the system and takes your sovereignty, but if you agree to that because you want studies, because you want housing or whatever, because like you don't managing the world, then what they do is they would avoid acknowledging trauma, because that literally means that they created that. Because if you actually went through the process of healing trauma, just open dialogue or healing psychosis, for the record, because they're all pushing you to get these diagnoses, is housing first, independent of ability to work in for independent amount of times, practice in Finland, and open dialogue, which means that they believe you. Okay, in most cases they can't really put you back like with the family and so on and so forth, because if it happened outside of the family, okay. If it happened inside of the family, naturally need your own housing. But the core issue is that they believe you, and and you can speak for what happened to you, okay, that you are believed. But if they did that, then we would all know that 7th October coming, that Maui coming, that the war in Ukraine coming, like everybody would know. Okay, because that was that was this quote unquote psychotic content. Time after time after time, it was the so-called psychotic content that you see in wars, and you see war with Iran, war with this, and kidnapping, and all the things that they did for 7th October. You would see this, and so you would feel it on your body to certain degrees, because they do it from afar with the MK Ultra. So if you were allowed to speak about that, they wouldn't, but they couldn't do the Third World War. It was impossible. So this is another kind of Neptune karma, where you feel so helpless around something, and then the dream becomes the reality, and the reality becomes the dream. So you basically, what people thought was far-fetched is actually, well, that was not so far-fetched. Okay. I particularly remember that it was so difficult for me to ground, and everybody said, you need to ground, you need to ground. Even when I would go and buy crystals, you need to, crystals like the rocks, okay? You need to ground, you need to ground. And I didn't know how to. And when I would try to ground, I would see wars. So it wasn't feeling so welcoming either. And then I was like told, well, ignore that. Okay, I'm not supposed to ignore that. And then you think about it, all began when I began to step bare feet on the soil and began to see wars and all that stuff that you see that people call psychotic content. So, but I try to do this because I said of what they give is not, and it's not for nothing that the side effects are called pyramidal or extra pyramidal. So you're like, okay, that's all fucking weird. And so the world of people that were enclosed, isolated, all things Neptune, right, now becomes the common. So there's a breach between world. Half of it happens because the war extends, but the other half because people also find out solutions and find out a manifestation of talking about, okay, with anyway try to ground, then you go into your ancestry, and then you treat your hair, and then you treat your feet, and then you build the half moons because it's way more reasonable for agriculture, to restore the land. And you find out you live on a hill that is filled with eucalyptus trees that you usually plant to dry swamps. And you're like, what the F is going on? So bus drivers tell you, well, my grandfather, they said that the 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 sugar canes were so high, and the canopy was so high that you couldn't see the back of the camel, which we or you grew up as thinking that this is a desert animal. So all these things begin to transform. And again, the connection with Neptune, Pisces, and Pluto, Capricorn, building up to something that's way grander, and something that one connects into the other in a holistic picture that you couldn't quite comprise without the entire process. If you think about what would it need to release, let's say, kidnapped people, well, you need to make a place for them to be, and the entire paradigm of how you live life must change, because it's another way of being, it's another form of life, it's another everything. You think that the harm is when they were kidnapped and held down there, but you don't know what happened before. You don't know how many times they were MK Ultra before. You don't know if what after. You call it, how do they call this, flashback, traumatic flashbacks? It's not. They're still targeted. Entire way we treat CPTSD is all wrong. And then when you try to tell a person, okay, no, you're not having flashbacks, you're having basically you're still targeted. If they think you're invalidating them, you don't understand that you're validating for their reality, because they're so used to be deprived of validation that they believe that when you validate their reality, the most validation you could do is that, yes, you are having a flashback because something happened to you in the past, and not they're still targeting you because they don't want you to recover, they don't want you to speak. So they cause these things to be for you to be in a loop. And you don't, and people are so not used to it that they think that you're invalidating them, then you're creating validation trauma. So you also cannot speak to them, because yes, you don't, if the bridge is not created, then you don't want to, it's not about abusing them, it's about helping. And so how all things are connected with Neptune, especially when it comes to structure of the medical field, and then Saturn here is very important, because Saturn is ruling Pluto and is co-present with Neptune, and it's given a flavor. It's both given a karma flavor, a time frame flavor, perhaps allowing us to identify the patterns of Neptune more so than we would. And they're going to culminate in Aries. They're not going to culminate. The conjunction is going to happen in Aries. It's not going to happen in Pisces, which is very interesting, because it's going to culminate into sovereignty. It's going to culminate into independence. So that is a part of the way of Neptune going through a sign. And right now we can think about 2012 to 2024, 2025, and up to 2026 even. Neptune retrograde is when we find something, okay, there's find missing stuff. If Neptune is retrograde in your own natal chart, then you might notice that the significations of Neptune come with the retrograde more, like me finding that pebble on a Mercury retrograde. Now that is interesting that I talk about this. Well, Saturn is in Pisces, so it makes sense still. But Mars, yes, Mars moon. I'll let it develop because I think it has to do with something that I discovered when I was also, but this was already my second degree. I'll just let it happen. Okay, I'll just let it develop. I think we're gonna hear a lot of leaking. And remember, what is missing is not lost. So if there is cure for cancer, for example, what is missing is not lost. And the message in a bottle is going to come up in a very, perhaps miraculous way, by tending to all things Neptune. And Neptune can also be putting you in a situation, we think about compassion and grace and self-pity as compassion, and the place where you really can't help it. It's both surrender, the surrendering itself, if you're obsessed or something, but it's also surrendering your ability to tend to something that is missing. It feels like heavy lifting where you can't even do that. And you could be blaming yourself, why am I not moving, why is it not moving? There is more to the picture, and you are processing that. Okay, you are processing that. If you think about the 4 half moons that are created, 5, yes, in the making, in my backyard, and the processes in between them, and the children eating watermelon in Israel's Independence Day, and then wanting to plant the watermelon seeds. And I felt bad because it was difficult for me to water it. The whole structure is to keep the water in. So there's just something that is bigger picture than the picture that we understand when it comes to Neptune things, when it comes to something that is missing, because it's not gloss, it's gone missing because there's some sort of reassociation that we need to process something psychically to be able to get what's going on and then do something about this. And this is creating a situation where we feel helpless. But again, what is missing is not lost. So that sense of helplessness then builds into miraculous, almost Wu Wei type of purgatory events where that lost message suddenly pops up, miraculously transforming. And tying up the knots of that which was being laid around, okay, throughout really generations. So that is that miraculous feeling of Neptune. It does come with a feeling of something. There can be a sense of something lost, something missing, some places where you feel helpless. Okay, you're given an advice and you feel completely helpless to perform this advice. One thing I remember for Teal's one that she was doing back then, she said, everybody tells you to love yourself, but nobody tells you how. And she was tackling that, understanding how to give us practical steps, which literally nobody was doing back then. And then, of course, she was accused of plagiarism and so on. And when you think about it from the vantage point of a person who survived satanic ritual abuse and was dependent on that income to be out of human trafficking, I mean, let's put it as it is, then your ethics standards for work, they change around what you think of that person did or that person didn't. And as to what they were bringing into the world, and the many unfoldings of that, okay, and also the personal journey of going from being survivor of a cult to someone who is being said the lead in a cult, which is a journey of the soul, to anybody who's become a community grower, and it's a challenge that many people have to face, okay, which I think she tends to. She was canceled, and then she made video interview of kind of like responding to that and really owning up to pretty much a lot that has been said. But it's also important to remember that the world before was not really going anywhere. And these kind of like marginal spiritual teachings of people that were not reaching the consciousness was reached by a person who breaks it down, okay, breaks it down so that it is intelligible. But then, okay, credit is where credit is due. That's another point which I think was corrected. Hope was corrected by them. More about Neptune. If you feel Neptune is one of big Neptune teaching is that if you feel you cannot do something, it doesn't seem to have a reason, you want to look into the other levels that you're processing. Okay, I had a friend that she called me. Her landlord was supposed to just pay a small visit, and maybe they were supposed to fix something like that. She had 2 children, the house was a mess, and she was a survivor, of course, of trauma. And she could not fix the house for her life. And she came to complete crash down. She was working, and she studied, and then she was working, and so on. She came to complete crash. And they couldn't do anything because the framework, and didn't know how to explain it to the landlord, okay? Because as she would try to fix something or to change the location of the clothing, memories would come up because it's energy moving. And and later I remember after the years where a parent came to help me, and they began to fix things and clean things, and with their Virgo stellium. And there was a moment where I say, stop, thank you, but stop, because this is making my nervous system crazy. And the result is that one person is working their ass off, and the other person is exhausted and needs to sleep and needs to all shut the doors so that they wouldn't even see that because the nervous system is being overwhelmed. But when I was doing the same thing and I was fixing things around their house, they also experienced that. And they didn't say it so much, but it begins with the Virgo. It will begin that the fact that you don't clean how they like to, and they wanted you to do this, it's nothing. It's frequency. You change up things, they feel out of control because it's the way you clean, it's not the way they clean. Okay? And so Neptune here reminds us that there is more to the atmosphere than we can process at a given time. Okay, now in Pisces, the Pisces Virgo, it has a lot to do with cleanliness, where Pisces would look at the world and Neptune and the Virgo would look at the floor. He said, the floor is so dirty. Why is the floor so dirty? Why is it this? Why is it that? Why can you take 2 seconds to clean that? And then they do that. They don't notice what they do to themselves unconsciously. And then they would crack down. They would develop a disease that is impossible to diagnose. And then they can become shamans. They can become healers. They can become holistic healers that are very good when they begin to balance in that dirty floor with that holistic picture of what's going on in the world, of what are the emotions that have been processed, of why do you clean why do you clean this floor now when you will not be living in this house for a month because there's a war starting. Okay, that is Neptune. Neptune senses things, and it's very much like animals that begin to find a place to hide before an earthquake. Cats sleeping comfy on the bed, no need to worry. But this is Neptune. Another thing that Neptune does is it feels into things where it tells you stop, but it won't tell you why. And the fact is that you need to process, and there's a way deeper picture. If I look at season 2, which is a lot about missing people, begin to delve into missing people as well, of water expands upon cooling, it's obvious why I'm going through the processes that I'm growing, but it's also obvious that, let's say, a family lost a person, okay? And let's say the family is consisting of a social worker who is a not clinical psychologist, but kind of almost, and the husband is a nurse, okay? And they're very much associated with the psychiatric community and so on and so forth. And they basically killed their child because they put them under certain types of drugs that they were told that were helping to their child and so on. And then the child wanted to escape the family, so they went far, far, far away. And then whatever happened to the child, okay, maybe they are happy and living elsewhere and they don't want to hear of the family because they don't want the family to chase them. So they could be very much alive and well, but they just don't want the family to hunt them down. Or if they could be something happened to them in the forest, or if they could be they took all the pills so that they could commit suicide, or they're trying to knock off the pills, but because they do it on purpose, you will have withdrawal symptoms, then they harmed themselves and became lethal. But anyway, they would escape hospitals, escape their family, escape anything again, and escape people because they cannot ask for help because everybody will hunt them down. Okay, how do you tell this family, well, we found the body of your child, and that's when Neptune will cause delay in finding the body of the child or finding the child alive. Okay, this is also what I have to explain to you when I talk about water expands upon cooling. Especially, there are, and sometimes and this is just a benevolent case, okay, where nobody intended to hunt her down, where nobody was no incest in the family, was no religious bloodline thingy of secret society. They were trying to sacrifice the daughter or sell her to snuff films or whatnot. Gotta keep that job in place. um, but this is true, okay? If the family looking for the child, and it's like, yes, some members of the family were involved in some Mormon cult, and you can look for the documents all day long, and you won't find it, okay? But there can also be cases like benevolent case, okay? They really wanted to do help, and the doctors that are so understanding everything, they told them, if your child won't take this pill, they will die, they will harm themselves, and that's also, you hunt the child down, you make sure they take the pill, and then you good morning and goodbye. You have dug the grave of your own child, you put the child in alive, and you cover them. That's what you were and listening to the doctor all day long. And how do you forgive yourself? One way is to listen to the child. Okay, one way is to listen to the child. If a child gone, then it's difficult, spiritual experience. But change is never too late to change. We all have many things to change, and the things that we can repent, and things we didn't see, we didn't understand. And it also can be the situation where, for reasons you didn't understand this, because the child is so, because something happened, and that something happened that you don't understand, and that something happened. It could be even secondary trauma that happened to you and you don't remember. So that is, as a person that lived through processing secondary trauma from family for long time, I can say it's not simple. Okay, it's not simple to understand this even, let alone to explain that. And when it comes to therapy, it can feel like Swiss cheese. Neptune also deals with that. Okay, so we have a lot of anger around the issue, and right anger. And then there is also the process of Neptune, where it's the psyche processing something, and there's just no way to explain that psyche, what is going on. Like, why were you having these experiences when you were a child? It was not coming from the family, but it may have been coming from a global project called MK Ultra. And so the child processes things and sees things and feels things that they don't have explanation for, and they think maybe it's past life, maybe it's this, maybe it need, but not necessarily. More Neptune level stuff that's happening in Pisces. Definitely, because when Neptune came to Pisces, many people began to have all these channeling, astral energy, and the many things associated in near-death experiences, the hopeful things, but also the annoying things. It's setting the stage for the connection to sovereignty, to Aries. Jupiter, the ruler of Pisces, is a planet that talks about choice, but access to choice is something that needs to be discussed when it comes to Neptune. And access to choice can be environment. So, and it's also to do with this processing of things in the deepest of deeps of the consciousness, and the processes that entire humanity is going through. The vice of Jupiter was incest, okay? So something close to pedophilia, which is also something we are discussing, both with the without her knowledge, which sits on the same core. Any sex is not willing consent, and the person is not willing consent by the sense that the other person cannot express the no, is sitting on the core wound of incest. This is attached to the core wound of pedophilia. Okay, that other person cannot express the no. And because it's both that the discourse around these topics is very difficult to people, so people cannot reach for help, but it's also the fact that there's the satanic ritual abuse system wants to keep people, even when they do go to help or do go to therapy, whether as survivors, and there's always the risk of bifurcation, okay? There's always the risk that a person would develop for such tendencies, which is why that would be important to what as people call seek help, which is more intricate. But It's not just to recover the self, but also for environment. And then for the other bifurcation is that people might hurt in another way. For example, they don't see that the other, they think that they would be the most sensitive for when the other is going through trauma, and they're not. Even so much to life risking. And I'm survivor of such event. Okay, the person recommended me my psychologist when I called for help, and I said he offender, or I said very loosely, what about offenders that they don't have place to go to, and so on and so forth. He confessed to me that his desires to hurt me while he was hurting me. Okay, and he said it's you, the child, and the vulnerability of you, the child, that bringing these sides in me. And then immediately they were like, whoa, is he like this, is he like that? I must have talked to him, which of course ended in my torture, kidnapping, in ways that's there is technology to prove this actually, but it's called EMF, but and probably not only, but the same people that you would prove this to are the same people that are required to commit even worse crimes to children in order to keep their position, like a Supreme Court judge and so on and so forth. So that person said, I don't know, I don't believe in energy, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that. You couldn't even say to her what was the offense, because there was nobody to talk to. And she basically held a mole inside the fund that was helping people, survivors of childhood abuse, whether incest or not. Okay, so my case was outside the family, but for helping such cases, and of course secondary trauma intergenerational, but helping such cases. And she basically held not one mole, but all of the practitioners were guided for basically to locate people and to torture them and to kidnap them and so on and so forth. And there was nobody to talk to, still nobody to talk to, because they would do all the wrong things that would get people, survivors, targeted again. So that is another way Neptune can make you feel helpless. But then it's very unfortunate that we had to have MK Ultra South written on every wall in Beersheba and southern Israel, and entire war where entire villages hear commands from Gaza to be able to talk about MK Ultra without being put to ridicule. And now we become enraged. Now think about the people that have been through these things, and they had no bridge, because if a person said, well, the government surveils me, what if they are an author? And our government surveils all authors, by the way. If you write anything to do with politics, anything to do with that, all of them. So there was no way to seek therapies, no way to seek help. And sometimes intergenerational. I'm a daughter of an author. Okay, when I said yes, well, they deal with intelligence in the houses because they wrote the book and so. Then immediately you get a therapist that is, it's not the one that kidnapped, but before them come the people that look at you like they saw a ghost and don't believe you and don't this and don't that. So the one who believes you is already the one who is MK Ultra. And then there were people like Teal Swan that had to survive outside the system and escape human trafficking. How did you want her to make a living and sustain herself without committing crimes? Okay, so that was the list of crimes, although plagiarism in essence is connected to credit and is connected to a sacral chakra of relational chakra and sexual autonomy. And this was keeping her on perpetuative level that she needs to break through, but the entire society needs to break through. Would she be given housing first without dependency on her ability to work for the while until she can process things and to speak up? No, she had to pave the path. So that is another thing. Another thing that comes across with this, and the and Neptune can definitely get you to feel so powerless that you go from powerlessness to omnipotence. That is the Pluto Neptune sextile, the Pluto Neptune connection that we live in, is that yes, such thing can happen, where you realize your power, but there can be a misjudgment around this, or there can be again going from feeling powerless to desiring omnipotence, or to exerting something where you're feeling you're omnipotent, or stuff like that. With all the miracles that Neptune brings, it is after it is the planet of longing for something. So something is void, something is missing, there is grief, there is helplessness, there is shame even. Because to all other people it doesn't seem logical. Why don't you just get up and do that? Okay, if you go to the example of my friend, okay, why couldn't she just fix the house, or do it a little bit so the landlord can come in and fix whatever they had to fix? Okay, why can't you just do that? You're not physically ill, okay? You cannot not walk, not this, not that, okay? And when you go to therapy, they are dictated to abuse you in just this way. They are dictated to ask these questions. It's not because they're not professional. It's because the job is not what the job you think that their job is, okay? It's not a job to help you to rehabilitate. It's a job for money to change hands, and it can only happen when you're abused. It's not that they don't know why you can't do this, okay? Maybe some people at a lower level can be not professional and not know, but the people higher up the rank, they know. Yes, the psychologist knows, you can be certain. The person who says, would this child stay or not with the parent, he knows, okay? But you might not know, and they play on that. So more Neptune things. Well, Neptune can be associated with water. And you think about the cleanliness of the water. And one of the things that we do when we reforest something or regrow vegetation, we're basically bringing back the water again. We're bringing back fertility. So Neptune will Neptune. Neptune will be the tsunami that nobody expected, that washes off arid land and make it grow vegetation again. Because we can correct for nature, but nature also corrects for itself and corrects for us, which is not a bad thing. So there is a lot that, let's just put it that way, you did not need pandemics to reforest deserts. But then, because listening to the Neptune experiences requires such processing, and it catches people off guard because it deals with the question of all the other worlds, including what with the great beyond, okay? What with the afterlife? What am I channeling when I'm channeling, and so on. These are deep questions, and it takes time to process things, and it takes time to ponder through them. And the water is the water, okay? The water is not a clear mirror always. It is moving, it's dynamic. It has its swirls, it has its color, it has its texture, it has its energy. It can be very physical. Water is something people can genuinely drawn in, or can genuinely be lost and refound in as well. So that's the depth of the ocean. More Neptune in Pisces stories. Well, you really gotta look back to 2012. Everybody was saying, "Oh, 2012 is going to be such a great shift and this and that," and indeed, okay, we definitely have shifted to seeing and experiencing more facets of reality, and to more people experiencing more facets. But never before did you have Facebook groups where you can talk about astrology or talk about astral dreams, or workshops how to astral dream and share dreams with one another. I just read an ex post of someone that says, if somebody tries to kiss you, have sex with you, or give you food in a dream, don't agree to that, because they try to harvest on your energy and then you become depleted when you do when you do not astral projection but lucid dreaming. I don't think this post could be written before 2012 with anybody understanding, with having any crowd, okay? And it's written on X, mind you, okay? It's not written on like, you know, it's still a highly censored platform. Okay. Freedom of whatnot, but it's still a highly censored platform, okay? It just censors one type of people, not other type of people, so we get a different discourse, and so we can get the image that we have more free speech. So yeah, more Neptune areas. Well, drug and drug cartels, I think more is needed to be discussing this, because the drug cartels are associated with the refugees, and that's associated with the incest and pedophilia. And I've talked about that many times on this channel. And I happened to talk about this today. I don't remember in what context. Oh, yes, it was Israeli group. And so, yeah. Those things that you couldn't talk about without being deemed as crazy are now scientifically valid, but also those sciences or those cures for cancer, or cures for schizophrenia, which is basically housing first and believing the person. It's like, what is the cure for schizophrenia? Well, humanity, get a grip of yourself. You're insane. Humanity, you're insane. Get a grip of yourself. That's the cure for schizophrenia. It's basically a symptom of unsupportive environment, simply put. Okay, and it was considered the most difficult mental ailment ever. Um, so yeah, cure for cancer. Who will find? Maybe we will find cure for cancer. You know how many times people find cure for cancer? It's not torturous like chemotherapy. Can we get a radio station interviewing people who had their research stopped, or would they get assassinated if they talk like there's something going on? Um, and I'm not even talking about, kind of like the baking soda stuff. No, not just that, or just like some essential oils, or actually having receiving care or giving care, which is all things moon and all things yes, all things cancer. Uh, but I'm also talking about the like actual medical treatment, okay, that causes remission. But then we must understand that what we call evidence-based medicine is not really evidence-based. It's not really applying to the unit of analysis, ontological unit, okay, unit of analysis called human being, and it's not really working as medicine. And even if it's not really practiced, it's not really applied. Um, and I think we're going to, especially around psychiatry, maybe cancer, I'm not sure, maybe because Mars is now in Cancer, but definitely psychiatry, um, definitely healers, healing profession. Oh, all the things where you have to go through anesthesia, okay, where you have to be unconscious, like the without her knowledge side. Okay, it's a lot like that is being exposed. So all the surgery stuff. Okay, people have to go unconscious. Pros and cons of psychedelics, MDMA. You know, one good example is the Mokro Mafia in Netherlands, one of the biggest mafia in the Netherlands. The main products that they were, according to Wikipedia, okay, that they were marketing were MDMA, which is basically to treat, okay, CPTSD, and give you kind of like a love euphoric stuff. I don't know if MDMA is used for creation of like incest stuff, which very likely is the case, and it's why they managed to pull it through. Not because of their intentions more so, but then because of how or the reason it is allowed, if that makes sense. Um, and the rest, and the other was amphetamines, which are both produced by with using also cyanide, which I didn't know, and we all know why people need cyanide, right? And amphetamines is both kind of like your Concerta or Adderall and stuff like that, that people with ADHD use to concentrate. And amphetamines is it's what Hitler used basically when he was carrying his speeches. And it's still used. I saw it being used by politicians. I feel energy and some. I remember a particular lunation where I saw, where I felt that, and I was like, the energy was blending, and could barely sleep. And I was like, I understand this is the amphetamines. I did not take amphetamines, so I knew who took amphetamines, and I was like, oh my god. But that is funny when you feel energy. And amphetamines also, if you crash them, it's basically cocaine slow release. So if you crash them and you sniff them, then you're basically selling cocaine. So that's why these are the main products. And so you think about the duality of drugs and drug cartels. Was not the fentanyl, which is horrid, and was not even like weed. Weed is allowed in Netherlands, but that was the main products that they were pulling. Okay, something that helps you concentrate, something that helps you release stress, like cocaine, something that helps you heal from PTSD, from CPTSD, and something that if you must kill yourself, then you. I don't think it was selling cyanide, but very likely would have to, like, if you. so that's like interesting stuff. The drugs of prescription, the drugs off of prescription, the connection to social issues. Okay, like if you need housing, you can only get that if you are drugged up or drugged up. That's it. Okay, and if you need to have job, then it's gonna make you sick, so you'll have to be drugged. I think that there's but this system is having a lot of karma. And since many of us are invested in pharmaceuticals, whether we like it or not, because it's even mandatory where you have your 401k or stuff like that, so welfare and medical welfare, like Neptune is also liquid assets, you know, liquidating assets. Yes, and I cannot tell you like what to do because I don't know. Okay, I've just built half moon in my backyard. That's all I know. It's all I know what to do. But it brings water. Okay, it's not yet, but it brings back the water. So who knows what insight will I find out? Because that is Neptune. That is the liquid assets. It's the source of living. So yeah, and with that joke of I make even the desert water, I will leave you and see you next time. Bye bye.